Hi, I'm Bonnie Serratore with Spiritual Acceleration, and a lot of people are curious and wondering about the generational carryover, like what gets brought down through our ancestors, through our parents, through their parents, what is carried over through that gets into the DNA that comes through the blood, basically. Okay. So I'm going to back up a little bit. And if we were to go back like 10 generations, let's go back 10 generations. How far back would that be? Okay. So what happens is when there's a trauma in someone, let's just say way, way, way back there, there's trauma, some kind of intense thing happens. And okay, I'm actually getting an image of something, so I must be reading somebody. Okay, so I'm looking at a family that had wealth 10 generations ago, and something happened in that particular lifetime where they lost everything. Okay, so in that losing of all their wealth, the shattering that happened, the emotion that happened, the being impoverished, and the horrors of all of that. So what happens is the emotion that one experiences literally changes your DNA. Okay. I have seen through working with people how the DNA actually changes by clearing and healing emotional wounding. Okay. But it's also the same that emotional wounding shifts and changes the DNA. And then energy gets carried through the family, through the bloodline. So I'm coming back to that family. Okay, so major trauma. So happy, wealth, abundance. I'm not joking. I'm getting all these images. So I know I'm reading someone. Okay, so I see the husband, the wife, and I see, like there's a happiness, so to speak. Okay, then something really intense happens. They lost the wealth. And because they were like had wealth, the the peoples, there's always angst with people with money, okay? Doesn't matter if they're good people or not, there's always some kind of angst because anybody in lack, impoverished, you see people that have, you want what they have, there's jealousy, there's envy, there's, ill will, wishing, all that kind of stuff. So what I'm seeing is the intensity of these people, the intensity, okay? Then they have children, that intensity, they're impoverished now. So the emotion of all of that is now affecting and shifting and changing the DNA. And so now when there's children being born, that energy of the intensity of the impoverished, okay? It's the emotion that literally anchors stuff in, and it's the emotion that literally changes the DNA. They've actually can show and prove that emotions can be the DNA actually shifts and changes when you shift and change the emotions, whether it's a negative or a positive, the DNA actually changes. Okay. So you've got an experience of that. And then let's just say in that same family, yeah. So they have their kids, the parents die, the children keep moving on. But because there's something here, there's a severe impoverishment happening. So I'm seeing this particular family in that bloodline, the children, like there's how many children is there? Two, three children. And each one of them has had that energy come into them, in the blood, in the bloodline. And then they all kind of go off, have their own families, have their own children, but it's still in them. Okay. So that feeling of being impoverished is still in the energy. This is why when we see like we see generations, like right here, right now in our world, we can see generations of people being impoverished. Okay. No one ever steps out of it. Okay. Because way back somewhere that it got anchored in, and then there's a belief that will always be this way, but there's something that actually happens in the DNA and it comes through the DNA. But that energy, it's almost like it doesn't allow for a person in that beliefs in that energy. It's not a belief system, it's an actual energetic frequency in the DNA. and it doesn't allow for expansion. I mean, occasionally you'll find people that, yeah, they broke free, they got educated, or they became someone who did great thing, whatever, okay? But generally speaking, whatever's come through, that's going to stay in you. When we look at things like the Native Americans, this whole continent of the United States and up into Canada and down into Mexico, that was Native Americans, okay? So those traumas that happened for them were debilitating, okay? So think about that. Think about how many people were wiped out. Their whole tribes were wiped out. The offspring, the traumas of the horrors that have been lived, the starvations, all of that is still affecting those peoples to this day. Okay. Again, yes, of course, there's always those handfuls that do something, change their lives, and step out of it. But basically, it's in the bloodline, it's in the DNA. Okay. And that's why we see and witness people in different families. Like, for example, you'll see different kinds, different nationalities of peoples. And if you just pay attention, it's like these same old, same old, same old throughout the entire bloodline. Okay. And you can watch the different belief systems, the cultures, all of it. And it's still the blood that comes through the family is still going to be affecting these people. Now, for example, in my own family, we got Native American, my grandmother, and then also her mother was also part of the Trail of Tears way back. This is from coming down from Michigan. I think or was it? No, I forget. It doesn't matter. And there, my grandmother was on the reservation, and so she left the reservation, but her beliefs, okay, what she lived is still in her. So then her children, okay, they were like the grapes of wrath. They were migrant workers, lived in chicken coops, never had shoes, didn't go to school, went to school for a little bit, but rags, okay? That gets anchored in. It's a belief system. It's in the body, it's in the blood, okay? And then for my mother, she never had an education, became a waitress, but she made good money, and then she tried to overcompensate by giving to her children. But that energy and belief is still there, okay? So it gets passed down through her children, which is me, and then I pass down to my children and my grandchildren, okay? But the good news is in my family, I was the one who was, I mean, everyone's in great suffering, but for me, it was like the suffering was so great. I didn't want to be here. So I found a way to heal those wounded places, and now I'm doing what I do, okay? But that energy is still gets passed down, into the blood, that whole belief systems, the ways in which we live, okay? So if you notice, if you start watching and paying attention to humanity and behaviors, that type of thing, people that have a lot of education and wealth, that type of thing, that's in their blood, the frequency. So people have, it's just natural for people to get education, to make money. Okay. And then when we look at the impoverished, it's like they can't ever get out of it. A lot of people can't ever get out of it. And it just keeps on going and going and going and going and going throughout our families, and keeps on getting passed down to the bloodline. Okay. So when we're talking DNA, we're not going to shift that very easily just by coming in and try to, change the energy. What changes the energy of the DNA and this type of wounding, these types of beliefs that come through, is doing one's emotional unraveling, emotional healing. Okay. So there's feelings and emotions and these beliefs that you don't have enough, that you're always in lack, you can't go to school, you can't get an education. It's like that's the energy that's being passed through that bloodline. Okay. And then also, illnesses, different types of diseases get passed on down. As you know, that's pretty basic. And, different types of illnesses that that happen in particular families and different, the blood that comes on down through the bloodline. But I'm thinking, what can we do about our well-being? What can we do about our happiness and joy? What can we do about our being impoverished or in lack or in never having enough? Okay. So again, what that means is you have to come in and do the emotional unraveling because that literally is what changes and shifts your DNA. To start changing that so you don't keep that going with the bloodline. With the things like I'm going back to that family, the original family I was talking about, and coming through. So I'm looking at coming through, and what I'm seeing is as the generations kept coming, the impoverishment, the lack, the inabilities, you know what I mean? Like people that don't even want an education, that don't even, you know what I mean? It's like there's a lack of inspiration, there's a lack of desire. It's like it just got darker, darker, darker. And then now what I'm looking at as I follow this down is like people on welfare. I'm not negating that. I'm just saying that they've reached a point to where they're not able or capable of caring for the self. So they rely on the system, some system to take care of them. Okay, then that becomes generational as well. Okay, so again, things come through the bloodline. Okay, all that. Here's another one. Like I'm looking at another experience, another family, another bloodline here. Something. So I'm looking back. Whoa, this goes back. I'm looking at violation like being raped. Okay, so there's a rape that happens, a severe, traumatizing, horrific rape. Okay, that energy. Whoa, hang on. I just saw, whoa. Okay, so then the woman that was raped definitely got pregnant. Her body is still in severe trauma. Okay, back then there was no help for that kind of thing, to help us. So that energy gets into that child and it's an intense energy. So it's definitely in her blood. It changed her DNA. Then she gives birth. That child also has intense energies. Remember, people too, that whatever we're holding, it's like a magnet. Okay, so she's passed on that kind of trauma to her child. That child comes into the world and lives, and then yep. And did she have more kids? No. But that child right there had children, several children. And but that trauma of that kind of violation, that kind of abuse is in the DNA. So what happens is because it's anchored in and it's in the subconscious, it also will draw to us those kinds of experiences. Okay, then it reinforces the trauma and reinforces the abuse, and then it more and more gets into the blood, into the DNA. Okay, so with that particular family, then I'm seeing that child had children, and then it just went, see, it spreads out. It isn't just like when I'm looking at I'll go back to the family that had money, then they were impoverished. So they had children, those children had children, and then those children all had children. So think about this. It's in the bloodline of all these people. Okay? Look at our world. Look where we're at. Most everything's about lack, not enough, right? Seriously. Yeah, and the same thing. Look at how women are treated. Look at the different countries. Look at the belief systems. This is all coming from the bloodlines, okay? From way back where severe things happen, traumas happen, and it gets anchored in, it changes the DNA. That energy frequency goes in, passed down to generation after generation after generation, and then we're seeing the outcome of all of that. Just look at our world. Look at the belief systems. Look at the greed. Look at the hatred. Look at the lack. Look at trying to, the wars and the battles and the fight. Everything that's happening. It's all about us. It's all about humanity. It's all about what we've lived. Our ancestors have lived, and now we're carrying it forth. So you can get a sense of, look at the world, what kind of trauma we're in, lack, poverty, hunger, all of that. So, it's like does get into the DNA. The way to change it, you're not going to just go in and clear out the energies. You have to shift and change it by changing the emotion that is still lodged in the subconscious. Okay. Now, you can do a lot on your own. I've probably done 99% of my work on my own and shifted and changed my whole life. Seriously. Okay. So, when you have an experience and you have an emotional reaction, what you want to do is you want to start facing that emotion. You want to come in and know yourself in this emotion, in this kind of experience, in this trauma that's lodged in your subconscious. By going through the emotions that get activated just by being in life, then what happens is you're literally knowing the energy, that intense emotion. When you know it, it literally transmutes, okay, transforms, disintegrates, dissolve. It doesn't live in there anymore. You have just changed your DNA. Okay? That DNA that you just changed, if you haven't had children yet, it's going to go right down into, if you have children, then it's going to go right down into your children, to your offspring. Okay? They will be changed. Okay? They will be changed from what you grew up with. This is also how people make changes in their families, and then they change what happens in their children because they're making changes in their emotional body, okay, in their subconscious, and in that change, it changes the DNA. So, people, we can affect change by facing ourselves, going into our emotions, which I think is vitally important to know that. Make differences, make choices, shift and change your reality and change the reality of your, all the future generations that are coming from you. And you have that ability. Okay, so we do have a group energy clearing that will actually support this. Okay, this is on, it's called Fight, Flight, Freeze, and that is on March 28th. That will help and assist you because that reptilian brain is also affecting your DNA, it's affecting your emotions. So, by cleaning up and clearing out that energy as well as a lot of the subconscious energy, it's going to change your DNA. Okay, so good things, to be aware of that you can take advantage of to change your world, change your life, and change your own future generations, change the bloodline of your family by facing the traumas that you are still feeling and still are affected by. So the good news is you have the ability, you got the power to make changes, shift and change your family's future generations.